You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. Lot to get to today, and who would have thought on November 12th that the Browns would be an afterthought? Let's face it, the Browns are not worth talking about. But another team in Cleveland is. They've passed the mantle from the Guardians straight to the Cavs. While the Browns continue to let us down, the other two teams in this town are taking care of business. Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com joins me now to talk about what has been a remarkable start for the Cavaliers, the greatest start in franchise history. Chris, I know you've been positive about this team when others were not, but even you could not have imagined that this team would start 12-0. Nobody can imagine that, right?
No, not 12-0. Odds makers certainly didn't predict that either. The over-under was set at 48.5. They're a quarter of the way through, and we've played, 3 weeks of the NBA season? Yeah. So no, nobody saw this coming. Look, they had some things on their side. There's no doubt about it. But, Bull, it felt like this was going to take time because they were trying to implement a new system offensively, because they were trying to incorporate a few new pieces into the rotation. Guys were in different roles and how they were being used was different than in the past. So like all that newness, even though it was a relatively connected group and a lot of holdovers from the previous season, 13 of 14 full-time NBA players from the previous team, there was still an element of newness with a new coach that made you think, hey, there's probably going to be some early growing pains, but you just haven't seen that.
Not at all. You've seen whatever the opposite of growing pains is. That's what you've seen. And there's a lot of credit to go around, but we got to start with the coach because ultimately, as you just said, the only thing that really changed on this team was the coach. And it's just remarkable. He has guys playing unselfishly. Not that they were a selfish team, but the ball movement compared to what it used to be couldn't be more opposite. Evan Mobley, I could keep going, but let's start with the coach. What is the number one thing about him that has made him so impactful?
I think, Bull, it's the fact that the guys believe that he's going to find answers throughout the course of games, throughout the course of a season, throughout the course of a potential playoff series in April, May, and June. They have bought in completely to this new style, and this is what the Cavs front office wanted. If you think back to the offseason, they said everything to you without specifically saying it. Yeah. It was in blinking lights if you wanted to listen to them, that they believed coaching was a problem last year. They believed that coaching was holding this team back. And it's not that they weren't a good team. They got to the Eastern Conference semifinals. They won their first playoff series without LeBron in more than 30 years. But this was a group that was trying to take the next step. How do we get to the conference finals? How do we get to the NBA finals? And they determined that their roster was good enough. They were telling you that their roster was good enough, that they believed in Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell as a pairing, that they believed in the core four of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. They believed that the two big setup was going to work with Evan Mobley and Jarrett. They believed that they had enough depth on this roster. They believed that all of the pieces were cohesive and they could fit well together. They just believed that a new coach needed to take it to the next level. They were all saying, what does this look like with a new coach in a new system, with a new offense, with a dynamic offense that can complement one of the best defenses in the NBA? And you're seeing what it looks like. Yeah. You're seeing a team that is a legitimate championship contender. And I know it's early in the season, and I know it's only November, and so many things have to play themselves out. But everything that the Cavs have accomplished to this point, it doesn't feel like a fluke. It doesn't feel like a flash in the pan, get hot at the right time. It feels like a really, really good team that now has a level of belief in the coach that did not exist to the same level last year.
And yeah, you're right. And the biggest thing, obviously, in terms of the players, and obviously Darius Garland having a much better season than he's had the last 2 years. But we've seen Darius Garland play at an all-star level. We've seen Donovan Mitchell, obviously. We've seen even Jarrett Allen play at an all-star level. But Evan Mobley, for 3 years, obviously he'd been a heck of a defensive player. But offensively, there was always something lacking. And I remember Jason Lloyd saying to me 3 years ago, he's like, if the Cavs are going to win a championship, or whenever they got Donovan, he's like, the Cavs are going to win a championship, Evan Mobley's got to become the best player, or at least close to it. And right now it looks like, I don't know, I'm not saying he's the best player, but he's much closer to Donovan Mitchell than he's been the last 3 years. And I don't know if it's the confidence or whatever it is. Like, he looks like Tim Duncan out there right now. I mean, it's crazy. He is a completely different player.
I think it's time to start calling him Slim Duncan.
Slim Duncan, yeah, I like that. But he's a different player now.
He is a different player. He's playing with more aggressiveness. He's playing with more force. Look, I think part of it, Bull, is the natural evolution of Evan Mobley. And him and I talked about this a number of different times in the first couple of weeks of the season. And we talked about it in training camp, too. He had a vision for himself as a player. And we're starting to see it. But it takes time to get to that point.
Sure.
It's not just going to happen overnight. But there's another thing that has happened with this team. And I think it's really, really important. And I think it points to, in part, why they're 12-0 and they're still perfect right now. Donovan Mitchell has realized, Bull, that in order to take a step forward, he's had to take a step back. That has taken a level of maturity. That has taken a level of professionalism. That has taken years of understanding. And there was a moment that happened last year following the Eastern Conference semifinals loss against Boston. It's game 5. They just lost. Everybody's in the locker room trying to figure out, what the next step is for this organization. They're trying to process their season being over. And they're talking about the things and all the different reasons why they came up short in the series against Boston. And look, they just lost to the eventual NBA champions. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody inside that locker room knew what they were up against when it came to the Celtics. And I think everybody in that locker room knew that the Celtics were probably going to go on and win the NBA championship. Like, there were players in the Cavs locker room that were calling Boston a cheat code. Mm. And they didn't play with Donovan Mitchell in the final 2 games. And Jarrett Allen missed that entire series. And Karis LeVert missed game 5. But as everybody was about to walk out of the locker room, Donovan goes up to Evan Mobley, specifically Evan Mobley, and he hits him on the chest multiple times. And I still remember this vividly, and I put this in my memory bank because I was wondering how important it was going to be. He hit him on the chest multiple times, and he says, "That's who you are. That's who you need to be." And that was an eye-opener. That series against the Celtics was an eye-opener, not for people inside the organization, but for Donovan Mitchell specifically, that Evan is very close to being the man. Evan is almost ready to become the franchise player. And I think in off-season workouts, Donovan and the other players saw it. And then in training camp, Donovan and the other players saw it. And Donovan Mitchell has empowered Evan Mobley. He multiple times throughout the course of this season has said, you need to be the guy. You need to be more vociferous. You need to demand the basketball from me. This has to be you more involved in the offense. And it's not Donovan Mitchell every single night, right? Going out there, scoring 30, 35. The maturity, the wisdom of Donovan, the growth in Donovan is understanding that not every game calls for him scoring 30 to 35. Sometimes it's get Evan Mobley involved. Sometimes it's defer to Darius Garland. And I just think there's been a different Donovan Mitchell from the standpoint of he understands the importance of Evan Mobley. He understands the importance of Darius Garland. And he understands the importance of all of these different guys taking a step forward. And if that means he has to take a slight step back on certain nights, he's been more willing to do that because it's for the betterment of this team.
I think you made many great points there. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we're wondering, at least on the outside, is Donovan Mitchell going to ask to be traded? Mm-hmm. Is he going to want to go to New York? And now, 2 years later, he's obviously signed an extension. But as you pointed out, and I think this is so huge, because in a sport where the superstars have more power than players than more than a quarterback in the NFL. And maybe I get it. Donovan's not a tier 1 superstar, but he's still a superstar. And for him to do what you said, to take a step back for the better of the team, And you talked about earlier the team buying in to Kenny Atkinson. Well, it starts with your best player.
Yeah.
If Donovan doesn't buy in, then nobody buys in, right? Like, he's the leader of this team. And for him to take to Kenny Atkinson, for him to be such a facilitator and be all about moving the ball and this great flow that they have to their offense, it leads to everything else that has happened for this team as long as he keeps doing that. So not only is he a great player, but he appears to be one of the best leaders in all of the NBA. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's an underrated quality of Donovan's. Yeah. And I think part of the reason why he hasn't gotten the level of respect as a leader is because he hasn't had the same team playoff success. He's never been to the conference finals. He's never been to the NBA finals. When you think about the best leaders in the NBA, you usually start with the guys who have won championships because they led those teams to championships. But everybody inside this organization will rave about Donovan's leadership, and all the players will rave about it. And think about being Evan Mobley, right? You're going into your fourth year. So many people have talked about the things that you can do, the things that you can't do. They've proclaimed you a unicorn early on in your career, but you've also been like third on the team in touches and fourth on the team in shot attempts and fourth on the team in usage. And Donovan Mitchell, here's Donovan Mitchell, one of the best players in the NBA, a perennial MVP candidate, a 5-time All-Star, and he's telling you that you need to be more involved offensively. He's telling you that you are ready to take that next step in your evolution. Think about the confidence that comes from that. If you're Evan Mobley, the confidence that you get from that. Think about the power that you feel that comes from that. And I think that's the greatest thing. The most underrated trait about Donovan Mitchell to me is his leadership, his understanding of how to elevate his teammates and empower his teammates.
And I think the best example of him not having to do it all is the fact that they played against Golden State, a team, obviously they're not what they once were, but they're still really good. They still have their two of their best players from their championship teams and a great coach. And they played maybe the best half of, I guess it's a prisoner of the moment thing, but as good a half of basketball as I've ever seen in my life in the regular season. And Donovan Mitchell didn't even do much in that game. Like, in terms of offense, he didn't shoot well. So they destroyed the Golden State Warriors when Donovan Mitchell had a bad night. Like, you couldn't have imagined that the last 2 years.
No, not at all. And that's something that Donovan has pointed out and other people inside this organization, Bull, have pointed out. It's been somebody different every single night. It's been different ways to win, no matter what the matchup calls for, no matter what the situation calls for. And I think those things matter when you get to April, May, and June. You've got to be able to play fast and slow. They've shown an ability to do it. You've got to be able to be effective inside and outside offensively. Been able to do that, right? It's got to be a little bit of Darius Garland sprinkled with Jared Allen, sprinkled with Evan Mobley, and a solidified bench that has been extremely productive. Yeah. So when you can win in a multitude of ways, and you can win using different styles, and you can be effective winning different styles of games, like, that's going to matter when you get into April, May, and June, because that's about matchups. That's about opponents. Yeah. And you can't, the other night against Brooklyn, Kenny Atkinson realized, I can't play the two bigs together as much as I usually do, as much as I want to, because they got 4 guards out there and they're spreading us out. And it's very, very difficult to play the kind of style that we're used to. So what does he do? He uses a lineup that had never been used before. And he put Karis LeVert at power forward, who is a natural 2/3. But that's what the game called for. And 1, Kenny was willing to do that. And 2, the Cavs had enough diversity within their offense, within their defense, and within their roster that they could be effective playing that kind of way. Yeah. And I think that stands out to me early in this season, in the first 12 games. They're not winning every single game the same kind of way.
No doubt. Last night in that comeback in the third quarter, they had all bench guys out there.
All bench guys.
Yeah, it was wild. Jared Allen,
19-9. At a time that they were down 9, that he never takes both of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell out at the same time in that kind of situation. But he did it.
It was crazy.
And that's a credit to Kenny Atkinson. Bull, he has been pushing the right buttons since the minute he arrived.
It's unbelievable. You cannot ask for anything more. They're like 100 out of 100. Is Jared Allen okay? The last 2 games, he's obviously the numbers have been down. Is he dealing with anything? Just tired legs or something?
I think he's exhausted. I'm keeping my eye on it because he was limping a little bit throughout the course of the game, and he just didn't look like he was moving the same kind of way and playing with the same kind of energy that he usually brings. But I also saw him in the locker room following the game against Chicago, and he was walking fine, and he wasn't icing anything extra. He said that he was good when I asked him about it. But I think it's worth monitoring. And look, Bolt, part of the impressive thing about the Cavs starting with 12 straight wins is, they've had an easy schedule in terms of opponents and in terms of breaks that they've gotten with injuries. They didn't face Orlando with Paolo. They got Milwaukee in one of the 2 games without Giannis. Yeah. But this has been a grueling schedule for the Cavs. They have not had multiple days in between games at all.
I know,
to start the season. It's either back-to-back or every other night. 12 games in 20 days is a lot. And I think you saw it a little bit in that Chicago game. The guys were mentally exhausted. They were physically exhausted. And that's why he turned to the bench, because Darius didn't have his legs and his shots were coming up short. And Jared Allen wasn't providing the usual energy that he does at both ends of the floor. And he wasn't as effective as he's been at various points during this 12-game winning streak. So the bench was able to provide that spark. And I think, you're just going to see a situation as the Cavs get through this grueling portion of their schedule in terms of how compressed it is, that Kenny Atkinson looks for opportunities throughout the course of these games, and even on off days, to try and get these guys extra recovery time or a little bit of extra rest. I just think Jarrett is exhausted, and I think a couple of the players are.
Before we continue our Cavs conversation, folks, I want to talk to you something else real quick, basketball-wise. Earn a chance here at BetRivers to win $10,000 in bonus money with BetRivers prop packs. Place NBA same-game parlays to collect player card prop packs and earn rewards. What is a prop pack? Well, it's a set of up to 3 virtual player scoring prop cards for the upcoming game with an indicated prize. If the player hits the scoring target, you win the prize included. You win based on how your player performs. It's that simple. For more information, log into BetRivers.com or the BetRivers app to place your bet and get your pack. Chris, I'm going to keep it real as I always do. When the Cavs signed Ty Jerome last year, I had no clue who he was. Never heard of the guy. Never. I was told today, I admitted this today, and Mikey McNuggets from our show was like, he was a great college player. Was it West Virginia or something?
Virginia,
okay. Wow. And then he plays the first 2 games last year and is injured the whole season. So coming into this season, Earl, of course, our guy Earl the Pearl. And Earl loved Ty Jerome. And last year he was like, I love Ty Jerome. He's going to be a good player. And he misses the whole season. And I've been busting his balls about it until this year. I was like, this guy you love, he misses the whole season? What the hell is going on? Well, Ty Jerome may be the best player in the NBA per minute right now. What is going on? This guy is incredible. Every time he goes on the floor, he makes something happen every time he touches the ball. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. It's crazy.
So Donovan Mitchell has played with Ty Jerome since they were 8 years old.
I did not know that. I like that. Good.
And I asked Donovan last night, I said, is this what you expected from Ty when you were so excited about the signing last offseason? And he was like, Chris, no. No. Ty is my dog, and Ty is my guy. I've played with him since I was 8 years old. I have followed his career when he was one of the best college players. Yeah. And he was going on that Final Four run. He said, no. How could you expect this? We didn't think he was this kind of defensive player. We didn't think he was going to shoot better than 50% from 3-point range. Yeah. But, this is the kind of impact that a guy can make with an opportunity. And if you think about it, Ty, part of the reason why he left Golden State, Bull, is because he just didn't feel like that big opportunity was going to be there playing behind Steph and some of the other guys that they had there. But while he was in Golden State, he was with Kenny Atkinson. So he was familiar with the system. He was familiar with the coach. And the opportunity is there for somebody like Ty. It was there last year for somebody like Ty. Look, this front office was really, really excited about the signing of Ty Jerome last offseason. It's somebody who, going back to 2019, they wanted to draft in the first round. He got picked 2 picks in front of them. They were picking 26th. He went 24th. It was going to be Darius Garland with the 5th overall pick and Ty Jerome with the 26th pick. But he got picked. Yeah. And then when he was a free agent and he was making his decision, do I stay in Golden State on a 2-way contract or do I leave? Like the Cavs tried to sign him 1 year before they ultimately did. And Kobe Altman has been an admirer of Ty Jerome since he was an assistant coach at Columbia. So this is a front office that has a level of belief in Ty, and they felt like not having him last year because of the injuries was something that affected them to a great deal. He was going to be their backup point guard. Yeah. He was going to play 20 to 25 minutes a night. He was going to anchor that second unit and be the steady, stabilizing force of that second unit last year. Right. It didn't happen because of the injury. But there was still a belief coming into this year. I don't know to this level, but there was a belief in Ty that he could be an impact player for them coming off the bench. And my goodness, has he been? You're right, Bull. Every time they call his number, positive things happen for this team. And I talked to Ty a little bit after the game in Chicago, and I said, how are you approaching this? Like, what do you see as your role for this team? Because, Donovan has talked about his role and Darius and Evan, and you're not going to have those kinds of opportunities. You're not going to get those touches. You're not going to get those shot attempts. But what do you envision as your role? And he said he watches the game in the first quarter, and he sees what the Cavs need. And he just tries to fill in the gaps, whether that's offensively, whether that's defensively, whether that's shooting, whether that's passing. And he has done that. He has been great at the start of this season for the Cavs.
What's nice as a fan right now is that no matter who the Cavs put on the floor, of the 10 guys that play regularly, you're confident. Like, you feel good. There's not a single player. 2 years ago when they played the Knicks in the playoffs, half the starters I didn't even want to see out there. Now, whatever player of their top 10, whatever it is, they play, you feel like that guy's going to contribute in some way. Maybe not scoring, whatever, but there's nobody out there you're like, ugh, why are they playing him, right? Like, not a single guy right now.
You're right about that. And they've got the playable depth that allows them to operate this kind of way. And it allows Kenny Atkinson to be the kind of coach that he wants to be. He said the minute that he arrived here, Bull, I'm going to celebrate this team's depth. I'm going to play 10 or 11. And I know that it's going to be hard to find 10 or 11 because I probably have 12 or 13 that I could play on a nightly basis. And they're doing this, by the way, without Max Strus, who was one of the most important players that the Cavs had last year, who was going to be in the starting lineup on opening night, and who so many people inside this organization were really, really excited about. Because if you think about the things that Max does well, and you think about what this starting lineup needs, and you think about what Kenny Atkinson's system is all about, it speaks to Max Strus. Continuous movement, playing with pace, 3-point shooting, cutting, being a trigger on the offensive end of the floor, passing, making the extra pass. That's what Max has done his entire life. So they believe that this offense is going to take another step forward when Max comes, because he's going to complete the starting group in a way that Isaac Okoro can't and doesn't, in a way that Dean Wade can't and doesn't, because they're not Max Strus. They don't have the same skill set. They're not as talented as Max. So when they have him back in the mix, all of a sudden Kenny's going to have to make some difficult decisions when it comes to his rotation. But that is a good problem to have for any coach. And if you're going to have this level of depth and you're going to have this level of trust in the guys in the second unit, you're going to have to continue to lean on it. And Kenny Atkinson has certainly done that. And I think it's going to be a benefit to these players when you get toward the end of the season that they don't have to play 35 to 37 minutes a night, hard minutes for Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. They're not going to be physically and mentally worn down when it's the most important time of the year.
So you're in Philadelphia tomorrow night. The Cavs will try to make it 13-0 against the Sixers. The Sixers are playing the Knicks tonight.
Yeah.
And supposedly Embiid's playing tonight, but not going to play against the Cavs. Is that correct as far as you know?
That's the vibe that I have. That's all of the intel that I have on that. I think bringing him back, he doesn't want to play back-to-backs to begin with, and bringing him back off this layoff to play 2 games in a row, I just don't think that's going to happen.
So, obviously, the Cavs, you mentioned it before, guys are a little tired. They're playing so hard. And I love that they admitted that they care about this winning streak. I love that. I know some people were like, oh, they shouldn't talk about it. But nah, I love it. Because you want, as a fan, you want to know that the players care. Sometimes it feels like you care more as a fan than the players do. But the fact that the coach admitted it, and then the players admitted that, they're paying attention to it, that was awesome. And, right, wasn't it? I thought so.
I asked Evan Mobley, I said, do you know the number? Do you know the record? I asked him last night after the game. He said, oh, yeah, it's 24. Somebody brought that up a couple of wins ago. So, I mean, they're very aware. I don't think they've pulled up a schedule and said,
sure,
oh, God, we've got to beat Boston twice. Yeah. We've got to beat Denver. And then we've got to go on the road to Miami. We never win in Miami to get the record setter 25, if it gets that far. I don't think they've looked at the schedule that way, but they're all aware that 24 is the number that they're trying to reach.
Yeah. I'm hoping they at least get it to Boston Tuesday night, still undefeated. Because obviously Boston, Cleveland's going to be a great game. But if the Cavs are undefeated going into that game, and they should be, I mean, they're playing, Philly without Embiid and without Maxey, and then you play Chicago again. You never know. It's the NBA. But if they can go undefeated into that game, I mean, that's going to be a crazy level of excitement for that. It'll be either way, but if they're undefeated, it's a whole nother level.
Yes. And obviously Boston's not the Boston that they're going to be when the playoffs arrive.
Sure.
And they don't have Porzingis and stuff like that. But that Boston's very, very prideful. That the Celtics want to send a message and say, hey, cute story, guys. Great start to the season. But we've got the banners hanging. We're the defending champs. We're going to knock you off your pedestal.
100%. And that's why, either way, I can't wait for that game. But it's just another level if they go undefeated. Yeah. Chris, great stuff as always, man. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate the time. We'll talk to you again soon.
You got it, bud. Anytime.
Great talking with my buddy Chris Fedor there from Cleveland.com. Check out his great work. And the Cavs will play, of course, on Wednesday night against Philly. And, man, it's just keep on rolling here. And they'll play Chicago after that. Then the big game against Boston coming up next Tuesday. Can't wait for that one. If the Cavs can stay undefeated going into that game with Boston a week from today. I'll be back live on Thursday. It's Bull and Fox Thursdays in the bullpen. We started it last week. Join me and Dustin live every Thursday at 2 p.m. right here in the bullpen. Thanks to Z, Max, and Alex for all producing today. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.